Hello, everyone, and welcome to my hot take of the month. This is something that, yay, I'm actually able to post before I go on hiatus here. And oddly enough, this is a conversation that I've been having with one of my friends over the past year or so. And then also, I was talking to my friend Onyx about it as well when it came up in conversation when we were weirdly enough talking about Interview with the Vampire because we were also discussing books and the adaptations and when Interview with the Vampire was written and what was popular during that time, and the list just kind of goes on. So this was actually a post that I had originally made over on my Facebook, actually, and I transferred it to my live journal once I had purged and deleted that particular piece of social media, and I'd stuck it over on my live journal. So this post was about My Fair Lady, and I made it on November 28th, 2017. And the conversation that I said was that I was rewatching My Fair Lady, and it makes me wish I had done a paper on it in college. There are so many examples of abuse and how a man's view of women really hasn't changed since the Victorian era, and I would argue even beyond. For example, and the most obvious is how Professor Henry Higgins calls Eliza Doolittle all manner of horrid names, i.e. squashed cabbage leaf, harpy, and brazen hussy, just to elicit a proper phonetic sound from her. Not surprising, this doesn't work. But the minute he shows genuine kindness towards her, she gets it immediately. Not that the film or stage production don't address this, but the ending leaves something of a bad taste in my mouth, as Eliza leaves, vowing never to see him again, but returns at the very end, thus continuing the cycle of abuse. I would very much enjoy seeing a production where the very obvious abuse is brought into a harsher light, and at the end of the play, Higgins is left sitting all alone in his silent, empty study with nothing but a bottle of brandy and only Eliza's voice on the record player to fill his lonely world forevermore. I still actually stand by this, but I have some things to add. But before I do, we're going to talk about something that one of my teachers from massage school had actually responded to this in a comment. And it said, actually the Village Theater, which is a theater up in the Seattle area, did a reinterpretation of that 2 years ago, that being My Fair Lady, with the end being that Henry Higgins was cowed by Eliza's power. This being said, it was also somewhat irritating inasmuch as it did not indicate a level of equality, just a reverse of dominance and submission. How about the equitable, mutually supportive relationship? Is that too much to ask? I responded by saying, given how selfish Higgins can be, equally might be a hard to reach concept for his character. Actually, most of the men in the play are fairly useless, except Colonel Pickering, could be argued. But that's Victorian society for you. I would argue just actually Western society at this point. Granted, it would be awesome to see a production where they became equals. Maybe Higgins starts out pompous and in the end learns how to be accepting and kind. Ideas abound. And she had responded with, that's kind of how they played it, with Higgins going from pompous know-it-all to fairly lost and unsure of himself. And I said, good, so nice to know I'm not the only one who rethought it. And then when I was talking to someone who was a friend of mine for a long time, he had actually said that, I don't know if it was this particular production of My Fair Lady, but there was a production up in the Seattle area where they had actually taken the last scene where she comes back and and then he's all like, oh, well, where the devil are my slippers? But instead of that, she goes and puts like the marble in her mouth, and then she like hands the dish to him, something like that. But I still stand by what I said, that I think that she shouldn't return at all. I think that she should actually stay gone at the very end, and we just kind of end on him listening to the sound of her voice and drinking. I think that's a perfect cap if we want to continue to do My Fair Lady. Which brings me to the second point of this, which is the conversation that my girlfriend and I were having was that a lot of these Broadway shows need to be put to bed. And we understand, of course, that this is going to be very difficult and hard to do because theater has been patroned by wealthy white people for an extremely long time. Since the dawn of theater, it could be argued. So we know that that is almost an impossibility, but is definitely something that we would like to see. So My Fair Lady would actually be shelved. You know, this is one of the shows that we were like, we need to shelve this. Because we can rework it, you know, as much as possible. But there's no guarantee that it's ever going to be a good show. And representative of the thoughts, feelings, values, and opinions of the people in the audience, which is changing drastically as the years go on. Now, there is something to be said about another friend that I have, Francesca, who had said that if it wasn't for these old musicals, that they would not have been introduced to musical theater. And I understand that, absolutely. We don't want to take away anyone's childhood, whatnots, you know, their dreams, any of that kind of stuff. That's not what we're doing here. But we really do need to take a good hard look at these shows in general, most of which actually center extremely toxic or just kind of mid men, and the women suffer through most of the musical. So My Fair Lady, Carousel, South Pacific, Brigadoon, possibly No No Nanette, if I'm remembering certain things from that show correctly. We would get rid of G-word musical. At least I want to get rid of that one because it is a racial slur, and I understand that it is about a woman's life, and this was a particular stage name that she chose, but it doesn't matter. Romani people have said that no matter what context you use that word, it is offensive. And yeah, there are some that are like, you know, we're doing the reclaiming part of it, but, you know, some folks are not a monolith. I think that, you know, Romani people should be allowed to have a say in whether that musical gets performed for the foreseeable future. This is another example of things that we saw during the Tonys as well, that sparked the conversation again. When Cats actually got retooled to be about ballroom culture, I think is the coolest thing I've actually ever seen happen in musical theater. To take a show that has no plot, you know, and turn it into something that is about black joy is fantastic. Now, am I a little sad because the fandom around Cats has built up such lore around the actual characters themselves? Yes, that part does sadden me. But I still think that we can have both. I think we can have our, you know, sexy kittens with no plot and all their fan lore, and we can also have the one with the ballroom culture, because it's the most natural progression for Cats, quite honestly, and really, realistically, like, probably the best thing that Andrew Lloyd Webber has done, handing over the reins in that regard, because most of his other stuff is just kind of stupid. Looking at you, Love Never Dies. But anyway, during the Tonys, you know, the show that got the most acclaim and the most awards was Ragtime. And Ragtime is about black suffering, whereas Cats was retooling and showing black joy. And a lot of people had come to the forefront and been like, it's kind of fucked up that y'all want to, praise this musical, which is about black people hurting, instead of the musical which should have gotten its flowers, which is Cats, and the ballroom culture and the queer culture behind it. And I absolutely agree. And then I found out, that Cats isn't going to be on Broadway for very long, and my girlfriend said that she thinks that because the public's reaction to Cats was more popular than it was to Ragtime, that if Broadway closes the show early, then people will have no choice but to go to Ragtime, which, sure, but at the same time, it's like people don't have to do anything. People don't have to go see Ragtime because Cats is closed. They can just choose to go see literally any other musical, like American Idiot or Hamilton. Even though we can have a conversation around Hamilton and how Hamilton, while the music is good and it is definitely a trajectory that we want to go, i.e., BIPOC individuals creating musicals with different flavor that then become extremely popular and loved, and then perform for the foreseeable future. That is the trajectory that we want, but we also don't want to suck America off, you know what I mean? Because that's basically what's going on in Hamilton, is let's make the founding fathers sexy. And cool. And I think it's such a time capsule of like 2016. And I do think, or at least I hope, that what was happening during that time is you have a lot of younger musical theater kids who, were really enjoying that musical. And then I hope that it got them into history. And now I also hope that those same kids, once they had seen Hamilton, been like, oh, hell yeah, started getting into history, started reading history, started looking at the patterns of history. I hope that they are now also the kids that are like, fuck this, we want communism. Because we were lied to, man. We were lied to. So, yeah. I want to say we kind of went far afield from the My Fair Lady conversation, but we really, really haven't. It's a much bigger thing that needs to be discussed. And I don't know if I can really do it justice in this type of video because I'm not so much a video essayist as I am an opinion paper when it comes to these kinds of videos. So my opinion is that most of these shows that are playing right now on Broadway, the ones that have been playing for years, and I'm not counting Chicago or Cabaret, but most of the Rodgers and Hammersteins need to be put to bed. They need to actually just be like, well, that was good, that was a time, we need to move on now. Because theater really has not moved and has not been innovative, I would say, in about 50 years. And it really doesn't matter for some of these shows how much you would try to tweak and play with it. The source material is not built for queer people. The source material is not built for BIPOC storytelling. It just isn't. So for a lot of this stuff, it's no matter what you're going to do, you're going to run into problems if you try to adapt it. And I do also think that it's kind of bullshit that we cater and pander to the white patrons in the audience. Yes, I understand that we need patrons in order to keep the arts running, because the arts are not something that flourish without help, specifically help from people that are wealthy. But the people that have wealth are not actively putting their money into things that benefit the community. And I don't think that continuing to do the same musicals over and over again, like The King and I, which has racial stereotypes, or Grease that has, racial and class stereotypes. And that goes for West Side Story as well. These types of musicals, we don't need them anymore. And we don't need to pander to these people anymore. That time is done. That time is gone. Considering what they are doing right now and how they are just trying to pave over creativity with things like AI and other such types of projects, we don't need to cater to them anymore. We do not need to do that. We need to shift the narrative. We need to change the rules. We actually need to start putting money into projects that are worth producing, that are worth having, that are worth continuing the tradition of theater. Because right now, theater is spinning its wheels. Theater is just another place for white supremacist ideals to take root and take hold of. It shows in the productions that they choose to perform. It shows in the way they don't want to pay their people properly. And in this case, I am talking about Village Theater and how they do not pay their box office. They will not let them unionize. I'm talking about this in the way that even so many of the theater kids involved are just liberals, actually, neoliberals. It needs burned to the ground. And in its place, what needs to take up space in that place isn't white. It needs to be indigenous. It needs to be black. It needs to be queer. And that, truly, when we have done this, then the arts, once again, will be a place where we can flourish. Thank you so much for joining me for this small segment, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you out there, and yeah, I might get in trouble, potentially, for some of the stuff that I said. Village Theater, if you're listening, do better. And, you know, if you're a theater kid and you're in my audience and you felt a little called out by the neoliberal thing, also, I'm going to need you guys to do better. I'm going to need you to take that system that you're in and tear it down, because it's past time. Thank you so much once again for joining me, and I will see you all in the next one. Good night.